Hello, Jake. Hey, Jake. I think your mic is mute.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, Jake. Good evening. How are you?
Hey, yeah, going well. Not too bad for this Sunday afternoon. All pretty good here in Tokyo. Yeah. Nice to meet you anyway.
Thank you, Jake. I'm pleasured. I'm honored to have you on this conversation with us. And this is one of my first conversations that I am starting with. And I'm really happy that you have given us a moment of your time that would cherish all the students moving forward in life. The agenda of this conversation is to help students who are underprivileged, who are looking for some guidance in their career, who want to do their best in the coming future, let's say down the line from 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And when I was looking into your profile, you have more than 40 years of experience. And oh my God, that's a huge experience. That's like so many generations have gone. And with this experience, I think we will get to know more how students can build their successful careers. I am really
Yes.
pleasure to have you on this conversation.
Very happy to be here. Happy to help, and always enjoy talking about school and what we can do to improve and grow. So I look forward to it.
Thank you, Jake. I would like to start with one of our first questions and would like to get some insights from you.
Mhm.
Jake, when you have started your career 40 years ago, which is almost 4 decades, what has changed when you look into these past 40 years of education and the education, how is it evolving today? So, what is the major difference?
Well, I think over the years, like all industries, education has grown and developed into um, a different being to what it was when I first started. It was very much uh, a very prescriptive approach, and I think that with things like the advent of technology, a more stronger accountability approach to things. The life of schools have certainly changed and grown. I think at the end of the day, we're all about learning, and even 40 years ago, that was the
Yes.
process. Always about learning, but how we deliver that, the style, the pedagogy, the practices, they've all evolved and developed along the way. I think that the key pointer, I suppose, is really about for me anyway, it's about the focus of the community and what you're trying to achieve at that point in time. I've been around the world in different schools and different contexts, and they all have different viewpoints on where we should be heading. And I think that as we grow and change and develop, and we have a better understanding of how students learn, or how we have a better understanding of delivering that learning. We develop new strategies and new practices. So I think it's always changing. Education will always continue to grow and respond, to what the community wants and what best practice is across the world. So it's certainly been a very eventful, 40 years.
Jake, like if I recall those 40 years back to 1986 when you were starting your first job as a teacher and educating to those students in that era, and now with all these AI technology coming into the student's life and every individual's life, I would say. So how that has evolved, like if we go back to 40 years, it was completely industrial era, like all the industries were developing at those 40 years back. And now when we are looking into the technology wise, it seems like more of a artificial intelligence or machine learning has been transforming the complete global education. So how that would tweak into a student, um, if they want to get more into some like artificial intelligence of skills, and how that would help to the students down the line for next 10 to 15 years.
Um, I think ultimately AI itself, it's great on one hand, and certainly as a challenge on the other hand. Whether we use it personally, for our own day-to-day life, what we do, or in our workplaces, to help try and expedite our tasks and make things a little bit easier for us, or to help us, you know, improve the quality of our output and such. Challenge in schools in terms of student learning, and in terms of is it the student learning, or is it just the machine that's learning and we're trying to take information from it, or such. But I think ultimately it really comes down to, in my view, it comes down to this notion of building curiosity, and that whole critical thinking approach. I mean, at the end of the day, students need to have concrete knowledge to start with, in order to build their creative thinking skills around their critical thinking. Needs to be focused on something, I suppose. And I think that what we need to do is make sure that our students not just develop the knowledge, but actually develop the practicality of how to use that knowledge, and how can we get students to build curiosity, and how do we get them to have that critical thinking that sustains them in a day-to-day life. And I think that starts with sort of one question. How do I know that what I'm doing and what I'm learning is true? Now that sounds simple, but it's surprisingly hard to actually practice. And most of us go through life just absorbing stuff. I tell students, you pick a topic each week. A news story, a claim on the social media, something that you believe strongly in. And if you spend, say, 20 minutes looking, for a view that you disagree with, not to argue with, but just to understand the reasoning behind it. If you read widely, you compare sources, if you look for evidence around that, then you're starting to learn, you're starting to develop an understanding, and not just reliant upon something to like the AI, the technology to give you the answers, but and give you something you can actually work with, and improve and build. And I think that's very useful for students today, because they need to be able to compare sources. They look for evidence. They need to be able to connect things together. And I suppose the hardest part of that is to change their own mind. When better and more informed information comes along. And that's the intellectual integrity that we're trying to develop within the students on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's the thing. We need to focus on the curiosity. We need to focus on the critical thinking, not so much the acquisition of knowledge via things like the AI arrangement.
Thank you, Jake. Trying to understand more on how your experience has evolved. Um, when I was looking into your expertise, uh, I see that you have been working in a leading school that is in Tokyo, and you have
Mhm.
also worked internationally, which is Australia, then Abu Dhabi, Dubai. How do you see global education evolving, and what should students do today to prepare to be a true global leader or a future that they might look for?
Well, I think that global education itself is sort of
Jake, I
has
think I lost
changed.
your voice. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me? You
Yes, I
there?
can hear you. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. Technology is great. Internet sort of goes in and out all over the place, doesn't it? But I think global education, once upon a time was all about the food and the festivals, learning about other countries like their exhibits. That's not. I don't think that's what it's like anymore. Like I remember just recently we had as you know, I'm here in Tokyo, and I had three grade nine students. There was one from Australia, there was one from Korea, and there's a Japanese a student. And they were working together on this sustainability project that the teacher had given them. And and they kept getting some friction in the conversation. It wasn't because of the language of the three students, of course,
Yeah.
but it's more about their assumptions on how you get things done. They were sort of different. One student thought that you actually deferred to the group and had the conversation. Another student thought that you had to take the initiative, and while the third one thought you just had to follow the information, the data that you've been collecting. And so those students had to learn how to articulate their own cultural logic. They had to listen to the others, and they had to build a shared way forward. I think that's the real global competence. It's not about knowing facts. It's about
Yes.
stepping into someone else's mental model and finding a way together. And that's what I think students need to know and to be able to do today. And I think that's for me, that's where the global education is central, to growing up in this world today.
So, Jake, trying to understand students from Japan,
Mhm.
how are they so different? Like, if we compare to the global level, what is Japan trying to do? Uh, Something good about education that might be learned across the globe. What Japan is Japan setting an example across the globe that the level of education to Japan is on a different standards when we compare to the globe. So what different students from globe can learn how Japan is doing better, and what we can learn from them.
Well, I think education in Japan, like education right around the world, is growing and developing and improving. I think that students, the education, fraternity has been going through a reformation,
Yes.
worldwide. I think Passy Sahlberg, coined the phrase a number of years ago, the global education reform movement. Affectionately called the germ, because everyone's trying to change and improve and develop. And Japan's no different.
Yeah.
The international education sector here is growing. And I think that within my field here at Aoba Education Group, um, we are working, with the local, with the education department, and helping, to integrate the IB, curriculum and programs within the Article 1 schools. And I think that is a sign that, the education is moving away from this rote memorization approach to a more inquiry and a global perspective. And I think that's something that not just Japan, but I think that's a worldwide phenomenon that is being developed at this stage.
So the IB education system, I have come across few articles, and it seems like IB is uh, accepted all over the globe. How does IB make difference from the traditional schooling system?
Well, I think that we believe that the IB program, is it's well recognised. Students, working their way through the PYP program, the MYP program, into the DP program, and off into universities of choice. So I think that the whole concept is that it's very transdisciplinary in its approach. It's not centered, on a knowledge basis per se. It's really about grinding a global leadership concept underneath the notion of 10 learner profiles, developing the traits to enable the students themselves to grow and develop and make a mark in community workplaces, wherever they may go, wherever they may end up across the world. And that's I think, a really exciting and also very important commodity to have.
So, trying to understand one more bit of your experience. As a dean supporting researchers, how important is a research mindset for students today, even if they don't want to become a researcher?
I think the notion about students developing a research understanding is highly important because at the end of the day, what needs to take place is that the students have to think critically. They have to be able to understand. And what we want these students to be able to do, I believe, is to go from the known to the unknown. They need to be able to develop real world applications. Because at the end of the day, when we get into the workplace, we want students to be able to stand tall. We want them to be able to be prepared for a future that's probably unknown for us at this stage, as we say. And I think ultimately, as we develop this research mindset in students, it's helping the students to ask better questions, to test their assumptions, to look for evidence in their workplace, and to hold conclusions, very very based in that evidence that comes into play. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Um, we once had a student who was absolutely convinced that she was terrible at maths. She was very bad at it. Now that was a story that she sort of inherited. Now instead of arguing about that, we just asked, okay, what would you need to see to test whether that's actually true?
Yeah.
So she designed this little experiment, worked with a tutor for a few weeks, tracked her own progress, collected her evidence, and by the end, she didn't become a mathematician, but she realised that the story wasn't fixed. That a research mindset, not
Yes.
just swallowing the claim that she was told and such by her parents, but that she was willing to update her own view.
Yes.
It demonstrates that that research mindset gives clarity, to the student. You just have to want to understand the world better around you, I suppose.
Yeah, so I agree with it completely because
Mm,
when a student who is like maybe a 10-year-old or maybe a 15-year-old who is trying to get into the depth of any subject that he or she might be interested in, and
mm,
if a parent or a school teacher or any um, guidance, if they can get across that level of time, I think those students would do some immense achievement in their life.
mm, mm.
I think that's what the major motive of the conversation is, that any student or any parent who is looking into this conversation, and if they can get some insight how a student or how a parent or a teacher can push towards that student and get the best out of him or her, I think that would mean the best way of doing our conversation. um,
Mm,
I'm just curious to ask one more question that I have prepared for. um,
for sure.
Based on your experience as a school leader, what are some common mistakes parents make when guiding their children's education and career choices?
I think sometimes, yeah, all parents love their children. You know, they love their kids and they want the best for them, no
Yes.
matter where they come from. But uh, I think often, parents mean well. Yeah, but sometimes they over direct. They compare too much. Why can't you be more like your cousin? Why can't you work harder like this? And I suppose that sort of kills the child's motivation. Sometimes parents step in too quickly to solve problems. Kids when that happens, kids never sort of learn that resilience, and sometimes parents push towards a path that looks safe rather than the one that actually fits the child accordingly. I've seen parents push a creatively gifted child into engineering because they feel that's stable and they just want that child to do that, and then the child over time just slowly disengage and not enjoy their schooling as they should. I suppose the mistake is valuing certainty over fit. And honestly, the world's changing so fast that safe paths aren't even safe anymore. A child needs to know how to adapt, how to be flexible, how to make mistakes, how to be resilient, how to overcome barriers, how to solve problems, how to take good, wise risks in order to build and grow. And I think a child who knows who they are and what energizes them, they'll navigate change even better than what you or I may have done in our earlier days. And I think it's really important that parents listen more closely to their children. Uh, and don't just jump in immediately to advise or try and fix something. Observe what gives their child energy. And that could be working alone with people or solving puzzles or creating things. There's always a variety of things that takes place there. And those observations that the parents see will tell them more than any particular test that comes out of school. I think they need to parents need to value the character and the effort of the child, and that's got to go along, of course, with the results and understanding student academic achievement and such. But we need to probably give kids more room to make choices, to make mistakes, and to grow through experience. I remember having a conversation with a parent about this whole thing, and they said, "Yeah, but what if he fails?" And I said, "Well, what if he fails now, when the stakes are small, and he learns how to recover rather than falling and failing, when he gets out into the wide world, when he's at 25 in an office or something, when the stakes are much higher and much bigger." Um,
Yes.
and I think that sort of reframing sort of helped. At the end of the day, parenting, is about building capacity. It's not about eliminating risk. It's about support and development. And parents, they work closely with their teachers and the school. We can help and support the kids as they grow and develop. In this, dare I say, ever-changing world of ours.
So, like with this, like I'm trying to understand, like a student, he or her, if they fail in any of their academics, and the amount of support that they should get from parents or maybe from their school. Sometimes we have, or we might have seen, or that might have happened unknowingly, uh, that the parents or maybe the school may not support sometimes. Uh, is that the right way to do it, or there might be some different approach when a student fails in their academics, and what school can do or maybe a parent can do to mold him or her, uh, being strong in that failure phase and trying to understand this is not the only stop, and you may get many more different, tough situations in your life, and you have to overcome as a leader.
I think, ultimately, we have to, support the child, through the ups and downs. We've got to help them, develop their ability, to not just, respond, but to actually, grow and thrive, within, whatever environment they take down the track. And that is really important. Success isn't always measured in a grade score. And working with parents to help them understand, for this particular child, maybe just simply being able to sit down for 3 hours and write an essay, is an accomplishment, regardless of the strength of the argument of that essay. For another child, it might be the success, could be in the volume of material that they write. Another child, simply turning up to the exam, is a measure of success, given their circumstances and such. So we just got to be careful that we don't sort of overburden or put a greater emphasis on high stakes scores. I think today, there are many ways to demonstrate learning, and helping the students to work their way through that is really important. But for parents, because we all want our child to do really well and want them to succeed. As a parent, our role is to help them understand what success looks like. And if we know our children and we work with the teachers, we can sort of define what that might look like, and help them to attain that success, as opposed to just simply siloing on to a grade as the determiner of the worth of the child in their academic development and success. So I think that's an important thing for parents to work with. If I don't know my child very well, that'll make it very difficult, to come up with what success is going to be like. And that success is not imposed by me, but
Yeah.
worked with through the child.
I have seen few students, taking leverage of what they have, maybe money, maybe education, whatever parents try to give them very hard, like they do all the everything to get their child the best education, or any uh, that could be anything. So how students should not take it granted, and try to understand that parents and school is for their betterment, and it's better for their future.
Well, I think ultimately, that's a life philosophical type question, isn't it? And it's about growth. In my mind, it's about growth, because you don't learn, that, when you're 16. You learn that, throughout your growth, from when you first start crawling and walking, and then you start talking and such. So the family values are really important. That comes into play in the first 8 years of a child's life. So if the parents are on board, and the parents are affirmative and supportive, and are not putting undue pressure on the child, I think that then they'll grow through the formative years of primary school and into middle and high school, with a good mindset, in terms of learning and wanting to learn, and being able to showcase that learning, I suppose, and then understand, or families understand, that they're being supportive by giving opportunity for for growth and support. And so when they do fall down, helping them to pick up themselves up, but doing that in such a way that it's a team effort, not just the parent picking up or the child standing up themselves. It's really about the the life experience, I suppose. Yeah.
Um, I have one more question here, which is sometimes students of today they face a lot of pressure to perform. From your experience, how can they balance academic success with mental well-being? Because like students, we are always talking about grades, always talking about competition. It's like a hustle every day. So how can students, or maybe parents, how can they help their child's mental well-being?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think firstly you've got to stop linking their self-worth to marks. I think that's a real trap. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be asking or expecting our students to work hard, or that they don't work hard. Um, but I think that what we need to do is to protect their sleep. The exercise, the friendships. Give them time to think. Those aren't luxuries. They're the foundation. One practical thing I suggest is that they set a time, set a stop time each evening. At that point, academics finish, and you do something restorative. Even if the work isn't finished, it teaches you that you're more than your productivity. And please, asking for help is a strength. I had a student who was on top of her class, but she was quietly falling apart. And when she finally told her teacher, she said, I thought admitting that I was struggling meant I was failing. See, we normalized it, got her support, and she performed better because she wasn't carrying that weight alone. I think long-term success depends on well-being as much as performance. If you burn yourself out just for getting those marks now, you won't have the resilience, down the track. And I think that's a really important distinction. Students will always be under pressure. Pressure from their social pressures, academic pressures, pressures from their peers, their family, their own personal pressures. And what we have to do as responsible adults is to provide the guidance and the support. And the closer we are to the student, to our child, the more we talk, the more we work out things, the better our relationships, then the stronger that balance between achievement and the student's well-being will be.
Perfect. I have one more question in the line. After years of working in education leadership as a dean, lecturer, and school leader, what is that one piece of advice would you give to every student listening to this podcast?
One piece of advice. Um, well, I think at the end of the day, if you if if you always yearn and seek to become better tomorrow than you are today, I think you're on the right track. I know that sounds simple, but it's actually, I think, a radical way to live. It means that you don't need to have your whole life figured out, right? You just need to be moving forward. I think students, my advice would be, to stay curious, because curiosity, keeps you open. I think always act with integrity, because your reputation gets built in small moments, particularly when no one's watching. Um, my advice would be, to serve others well, because the people who help others succeed usually ending up succeeding themselves, and even probably further than they thought they could. Um, and finally, I think my advice to the students would be to always keep learning, not just for the grades, but just because the world changes and you've got to change with it. That's how strong lives get built, not by finding the perfect plan and such, but by showing up every day, learning and growing, day after day. And I think if you sort of follow those key points, you will be better tomorrow than you are today. And I think that's something that we should all strive to be.
So every day is a learning, and we should progress with our learnings.
We should.
Beautiful. I have question related to the AI, artificial intelligence. How is internationally or Japan doing their best in AI, and how students can get some beautiful insights, how Japan is progressing on the AI, and what would global students learn from it?
Well, I think this era of AI, is a pretty exciting era, to be honest. I think that it's moving at such a fast pace. There have been so many apps and platforms and things that can help us be better tomorrow than we are today. And I think it's not just a Japanese perspective, but I think it's just worldwide. What we have to be very careful of course, is that we don't fall into the trap of just trying all these new things and jumping on the bandwagon of the next thing that comes along, because that's going to happen regardless of what we do. I think the AI perspective is about how do we use it, to support us, and not do the work for us, but support us accordingly. I mean, there's many places around the world where they're retreating away from the technology. Computers are being used less and less. Schools are returning to handwritten activities inside their classrooms to help restore the students' curiosity and thinking, I suppose, and not be distracted, by the technology. And I think that's probably not a bad balance at this stage. Uh, and I think at the end of the day, it's really about our own applications. If I'm using it well in my own personal and work life, well then I'll be able to use it more effectively with the students, I suppose. But if I'm not engaged with it, then I'm going to be left behind very, very quickly.
Thank you, Jake. With that, I have mostly covered up all my questions, I would say. And I'm thankful that you have given us this time. It's an honor to have you on our conversation. I thank you so much, because it's like I was requesting for one conversation with you, and you're the one that showed me, hey, I'm there. So I'm thankful to that. I'm thankful for that. Um, I would like to do such more contents coming in the coming future, and I would like to be in touch with you for further conversations. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Vilas, I'm more than happy to help where I can at this stage. If you need anything, just sort of reach out. I think that the more we connect with each other and the more we support and help others, not just in our local area, but around this globe, well, then the better off we're all going to be. I do really appreciate the opportunity to meet and speak with you today, and it's most enjoyable. So thanks very much for your time, and thanks for the invitation. Hopefully,
Thank you.
we'll catch up soon.
Thank you, Jake. It was nice. Thank you.
Thanks, mate. Cheers. Bye bye.
Cheers. Bye bye.